I'll call the committee meeting for criminal justice and public safety to order at 9:02. Do we have a quorum? Yes, we have a quorum. We will begin with assigned counsel. Joy? Would you? Timing is everything. Oh, and approve the minutes. May we have a motion to approve the minutes? Made by Supervisor McGowan.
I'll second.
Second by Supervisor Garrity. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries. Yes.
Morning.
Good morning, Joy.
Quick one for the attorney and me. Now behave.
Thank you.
Yeah, you have been pretty good lately.
That's okay.
Interesting.
Be quicker.
You are sitting right across from me. I like to kick the chair in front of me when I get upset.
How you doing? Thanks for being here.
Yeah, you got plenty.
Okay, on action agenda item, request for new contract with Legal Aid Society of Northeastern New York. Joy, would you like to inform us on this?
Yes, please. This is through grant fund, 100% reimbursable to the county, and it's for, which is for, this is one of the last distributions, number 6 on extension 60052. And it's quarterly. I'm sorry, I didn't want to know. There's a bunch of them. I didn't know. Can you...
You've got the resolution on. Or a meeting request.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Leave it to me.
We have it.
Oh, yeah.
We have it.
Okay, good.
We're a little slow.
Just so I'm not too fast either, so.
Okay.
Are we good?
Yeah, can you explain what's in front of us?
What's in front of you? The agenda is to pay out $45,000 to reimburse, to pay Legal Aid Society for services rendered under a grant. $45,000 quarterly. Still waiting for information from them. Haven't been able to pay them out because they're having problems with their numbers. But it has to be in place in advance in order to pay it out.
Okay, so this is the same that we withdrew from consideration the other day.
And because I unfortunately grabbed the wrong contract and put the wrong amount on the one that I brought the last time, which is the second page.
Okay, so this is the...
So is this one going to be for 45,000 or is it for the 86?
This one, the first one's for 45, the second one's for 86.
So we are considering two here.
Correct.
Okay.
I was told to tack it on.
Okay. So on this one before us, for distribution number 6, $45,000.
Correct.
Okay, motion to bring it to the table by Simpson, second by Driscoll. Okay. Any discussion then on this? Yes.
Chairman, yes. You mentioned this is a $45,000 quarterly grant. Have you got the grant already in possession of the county?
Yes, everything's all in line already.
Got the money?
Oh, I have the money.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, Supervisor. Okay, we'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries. Now the second request.
The second one was for $86,493, and that covers paralegal case management support services under contract 752, distribution number 5. That's also quarterly. Also waiting for information from legal aid to pay it out.
Moved by Supervisor Simpson, seconded by Supervisor Hogan. Discussion. And this is a brand new contract?
This is an ongoing one.
Okay. And again, money in hand?
Money in hand?
Okay, very good. I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Happy spring.
Next up is District Attorney.
Except for your signature.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, we got one.
Go back to, Amanda.
Did you guys get yours? No. Jason, good morning. How are you? Thank you.
How you doing, boss?
You're going to see two things on the agenda here. The first one, I think, is happy news. We're requesting to create and fill a position for a part-time crime victim specialist. For those of you that were here last year, we received more grant funding from the Office of Victim Services than we ever have before. That funding goes from October 1st through September 31st, that's their year. And that will continue. That funding has been awarded also into the following year, so October 2018 through September 2019. We currently have two people. We have Minnow Athenito, who's the director. This grant funds 95% of her position and 100% of all remaining allowable expenses. In conversations I've had with Washington County, they've now expanded to 3 full-time crime victim specialists. We have the money in this grant. Right now, I think it's about $46,000 sitting in what's called a furniture line. When the money came in, we really didn't know exactly where to put it, so we just put it into those lines. And I had a hope that maybe we could come before you and ask for this position. If you see that there's a letter contained in here from the Jen Ramos from the Office of Victim Services. She's the one that kind of administers the grant through Minnow, who's the coordinator. They've approved this. It's 100% funded, including fringe. So the numbers, based on the position title, I have been in touch with Christian Enninger and people at Personnel, are based on a 28-hour week. And with fringe, the total figure for a year would be $32,643. Again, that's 100% funded from this federal grant. The reality is, if we were to fill the position, we wouldn't be spending, we actually have that much, we wouldn't be spending that much because the year would end on September 31st, in theory, on that grant cycle. So what we're asking to do, if you approve it, and I'll answer any questions you have on that type of position, is to get that part-time position filled and then move money from the furniture line into the salary line so that person.
Can we have a motion to bring this to the floor? A request to create new position. By Supervisor McGowan, second by Supervisor Sokol. Discussion.
I have a question. Normally, Jason, what we do is, in a grant position, that you would fund a position, you would fill the position until the grant funds ran out. You understand that? That's been our past practice.
Yes.
Okay.
That's why I wanted to point out that the award for next year, we already know the award for next year. It's larger than this year's award.
Okay.
So this position would be funded certainly through
At least 2 years, or a year and a half.
Year plus.
Okay.
And our experience with this particular grant is, fortunately, it's been increasing over time. The other thing I wanted to point out that, I don't want to belabor this, but the way the position works right now, Minnow responds to all care center interviews for our office along with an attorney if we have one available. So she may be off to a care center interview with a child, which can take half a day. Sometimes we have multiple children in a family to take a day. And we have our senior, Joy, cover is in court. So there's plenty of times when we don't have anyone even in the building, and then the ADAs are running around, and I know a subject that'll be up today is the centralized arraignment. We can get calls at any time, please come to Queensbury, please come to Glens Falls, come to Hague, wherever it is, cover. We may not have any person there when a victim comes to the window. So we're hoping this would keep the person in office most of the time.
Okay.
So that's that one. Any other questions?
Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. Next one?
Thank you. The next one is, to be honest, a little uncomfortable for me. The state has raised the salary of judges in New York, and the DA salary is tied to the judge's salary. I learned this by reading a newspaper article, to be perfectly honest with you, and then reading another newspaper article. Made some phone calls, got the information. I've learned the background on how this all works. In Warren County, the salary is 95% of a Supreme Court justice. That number changes April 1st. So a Supreme Court justice will be paid $208,000. So the DA salary would be based on that. To comply with that, there would have to be a salary adjustment. Looking at a person who I don't think has ever asked for a raise, and I'm not asking for a raise, I'm just indicating to you that this is happening. I looked into, with some help, what has happened in the past. I saw that previously there was a time when a year went by where it didn't get addressed, and then they had to go and pay that year for a prior DA. And there was a resolution passed. I think Kevin Garrity was involved in that in 2016 when this sort of came to a head, because it's only a partially funded mandate, and this increase is not. The state isn't paying it, so they're asking the counties. It's not just Warren, of course. It's the counties of New York counties to cover this cost. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on it.
So let's bring it to the floor. Supervisor Simpson, second by Supervisor Bramer. Discussion.
Chairman, thank you.
Supervisor
Do you have
Diamond.
any support documentation with this request?
Yeah, so what
From
you've
the
got,
state?
this is from the New York Prosecutors Training Institute, and then if you want to look at the law, it's Judiciary Law 183A. I should provide you a copy of that. I think I've got a copy right here with me. It's 183A. And that's where, so what they did is they had a big commission back in 2010 to 2015 where they learned that New York State judges were essentially underpaid throughout the country. And they were paid in wildly different amounts depending on where they were. So they made this judicial commission, they made all these recommendations, they increased the judges' salaries and tied them to federal judges. And then, as you can see, without really commenting, that affected the DA salaries, which are tied by this law to the judicial salaries. So that applies to any, and believe it or not, we fall into the lowest category for a full-time DA. There's some a little higher, and then there's some that are tied directly to a 100% of a Supreme Court justice salary.
It's based on population.
Well, it's based on population or full-time. So higher populations fall into a higher category or full-time. Off the top of my head, I'm only aware of one part-time district attorney in the state. Maybe there's two, but Hamilton County, last I knew, was part-time. I don't know if it still is true. But I think their population's in the low thousands for the county.
Any other questions?
Is money appropriated? Is there money appropriated in the budget for?
It's recommended to come out of contingency, and that would be a
Portion of it come out of contingency, the raise.
And that would be a follow-up resolution to
Finance.
finance.
Yep.
For that.
While I'm here, I'll also ask, because I don't know how you address this. When we were doing our budget, the figures in there were sort of set. The salary code we didn't have control over. So I'm not sure how you address it. To be perfectly honest, I had no idea.
It'll go through finance. We'll raise the pay in finance.
Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can feel the uncomfortable level of this, because this is really not your nature, and I understand that. But, I mean, in all fairness, I mean, this is coming on, and we're talking April 1st. and we've already, set our budget. Is this something that we can, slowly grow into, or does it have to be effective April 1st?
I believe it's effective April 1st. As I said in the past, because I had to go backwards to figure this out. I've never been in this position. In the past, what happened was a retro check for a year was done when this came forward. Nobody notified me to this, so then when I learned of it, I had to start making phone calls, and it's a statewide issue. Frankly, I think there's a good argument that the state should fund this fully, and the county shouldn't be put in this position. They only fund $72,000 currently and change. So I know that the resolution from 2016, I think, was something to say, hey, state, you should be paying this, because they're paying the judges, but they just left this out. And the judges, I see Mr. Hobbs here, deserve it. I'm not saying they don't, but that's just the system that's in place right now.
Yeah, I've already taken the issue up with our assembly.
I don't have a problem, with it. It's just like I said, I'm trying to be budget-minded here.
Absolutely.
And, I take my hat off to what you do, so I was just wondering if it was, mandated or we're able to, instead of just taking another piece out of the pie, so.
Supervisor Simpson?
It's one of the long list of unfunded mandates. I mean,
Well, and then that's for many of the unfunded, yes.
Yeah. I'd like to ask the budget officer, this is proposed to come out of contingency, even though it's finance, I guess we'll have the final say on it. Where do we stand? As far as cash on hand, is there,
And from what I'm reading, it's tied, so they're tying these state salaries, these judicial salaries to federal judge salaries, judicial salaries. So it's at the time of that federal number. So I'm not sure I can even predict what's going to happen. If they don't change, then it won't change anything here, meaning in the future, going forward. And if I learn of something, I'll alert you and just say, I'm seeing this, looks like this is happening, but hopefully this is it. Certainly this would be it for this year.
right? I'll call the question then if there's no further discussion. All those in favor, and this is for the increase of the salary of a non-union position. So,
Aye.
all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. And now, we also need a resolution here for transfer of funds. And as we do this then goes automatically to finance?
Goes to finance.
Okay. So can we have a motion by Simpson and McGowan? Okay. And this is for the $14,200 out of contingency to cover the cost increase. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. If I may go back, we also need one more request for transfer of funds on the previous motion from furniture into salaries, and that's for the $32,000.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, moved by Supervisor Garrity, seconded by Supervisor McGowan. Discussion. All clear? I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. I'll stick around for if you want on that.
Yes, thank you.
Centralized Arraignment.
Thank you. Next up is the public defender. On the agenda is just a referral and pending items. We're looking for an update. We're not asking for any action at this point in time on this, but want to see where we stand, if we have worked out the situation below, and...
Judge Hobbs is here. I know he
And-
wanted to speak a little, and then I would like to...
Okay, thank you. Judge Hobbs, welcome.
Thank you very much. Sorry I wasn't able to make the last meeting. I had my own court issues to deal with. Since the last time I was here, we had a discussion over what was going on with the city, the holding cells, that type of thing. We did have a meeting between myself, the sheriff, the chief, the undersheriff, lieutenant from Glens Falls, and Captain Teppo from New York State Police. It was a very good meeting. One of the issues that this plan would resolve for the city is an issue of liability. Presently, under their agreement with the jail on holding, they could bring people in at 8 p.m. at night, hold them until 8 a.m. in the morning, but it was subject to certain requirements. The holding would not take people in who do not pass the suicide screening, who do not pass the alcohol, drug screening, are either coming down or impaired or intoxicated. What that left was that the city would have to hold those defendants who were not able to be approved to go into the holding cells in their jail, in their police department, which did used to have an approved holding area, which is not approved at this point in time. So they were holding the defendants until arraignments could be done, until counsel on both sides could be present, who might be intoxicated or impaired, might be coming down off of drugs, might be indicating some suicidal ideologies, and they were holding them in an unapproved area, handcuffed or shackled, and that creates some liability for the city holding a defendant in an unapproved area. In our meeting with Sheriff York, he offered, and I understand there's now a memorandum going around for the agreement. He offered to take in any defendants during any time of the day, even if they don't pass those screenings. That imposed some additional obligation on the sheriff, because those individuals would need to be watched on generally on a one-on-one basis, or at least have some substantial coverage for that. He included, and I sent it around to the chairman and to some of the supervisors, only because I didn't have a list of who everybody was here, the proposed changes in the dollar amounts that the sheriff was looking for. We also discussed transportation, which was an issue that the city had, and there was an agreement that essentially that they would talk to each other on the transportation issues. If the sheriff was coming over for an arraignment, they had people for the arraignment, and they had availability to take the city's defendants over or the state police's defendants over. They would talk to each other, and they would make an agreement to do that, but essentially the transportation would still be on the city, which is what they're doing now. If they have somebody in holding, they have to go up to the holding, pick them up at 8 a.m. in the morning or a little before 8 a.m., bring them back to the police department, wait again with them while they're waiting for the arraignment to occur. We also discussed the fact that the city and the state police, who have limited personnel, don't want to be waiting a long time for the arraignments. The fact that the judges, I would have the judges do the arraignments of those agencies first to ensure that they can get out of there, because you do have corrections in Warren County who can unfortunately wait for their arraignment to occur. So I believe, and I was talking to the chief today, I believe we've resolved all of the chief's issues. The memorandum that came out does need some tweaking to it, because it still indicates the 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. times for holding, and I understand that Sheriff York has indicated he'll make those changes. I met last week, I think it was last Tuesday or Wednesday, with the mayor, who's not here now, who indicated that the city was ready to go forward with it. They were simply waiting for the agreement on the holding cells, which is now out there and moving forward. For those of you who simply don't understand why you would do this centralized arraignment plan, you do it because the law of the state and the law of the country is that a defendant who is in custody is entitled to have an attorney present to represent him or her at the arraignment. That obligation under county law, Article 18, falls on the county to do that. That was a totally unfunded mandate that you would have to either have a public defender's office or a assigned counsel office or both. That's what Article 18 is those sections, which is what you've been doing all along. What has happened is that with the enforcement of those constitutional rights, defense counsel through the public defender's office, the DA's office has been going to the various courts, and transportation has been going to the various courts throughout our county to do arraignments at various times of the day. That puts a huge burden on the county resources to do that, because your DA, your public defender, your officers can't be on the streets during that time while they're waiting on these arraignments. There are times when the judges aren't available or the attorneys aren't available, and the police agencies have to wait for a substantial period of time for that to occur. This would eliminate that problem, because you would have set times for the arraignments. Everybody would know when they would occur, and the sheriff has opened his holding cells to hold on to the defendants until those could occur. So it's the same plan, as I had said before, that we did in Washington County. I had a Washington County stakeholders meeting just this past week. That was with the county attorney, was with the DA, public defender, the judges involved, and the sheriff and corrections involved. And again, this is the same plan that they're using. Across the board, they will tell you they are delighted with how this works. The number of man hours is substantially less across the board for the sheriff, for the DA, for the public defender, and not having to go to all of these various courts. So they don't quantify that number, but that's substantially less. They have been able to do it without any increase in their personnel. That may not be the case here, and have to increase personnel. I know that you have been concerned about how you do the funding, and why are we going to approve something if we don't have a guarantee, or if we don't have a guarantee of funding. What you do is you approve it subject to the funding. County Law 722E provides that any additional costs to the county for implementing an approved plan is borne by the state of New York. That's what 722E says. The process for doing that is that the county, approves a plan first. That plan then goes to the state. The Office of Indigent Legal Services, by statute, submits the budget for that to the New York State Division of Budget. The New York State Division of Budget has to approve that, and if it's approved, the statute says that the state shall approve the funds for the implementation of that item. So they will know once it's approved by the state.
I had provided you all with a copy of 722E, and if you look at the last sentence, it says, I tried to highlight it for you, the state shall appropriate funds sufficient to provide for the reimbursement required by this section. So I wanted to make sure you had that.
So the only way you'll know what your funding will be is if you submit a plan for approval. The way these plans are working is that the person who gets to the funding door first and knocks on the doors first is getting the funding. The people who don't come are guaranteed that they won't get funding for it, but will still have the obligation of providing the assigned counsel services.
And Judge, that's one of the advantages of us working on this quickly, getting this in. Otherwise, there is no other deadline except for getting the money to fund it. Yes, Sheriff.
Judge, so you're saying, we've got the budget, we've had it for a while, we amended, had the undersheriff amend it
Correct.
for our fees, for the eventual jail side. From what I'm hearing you're saying, if you submit the plan,
Yep.
and they accept it, they have to fund it.
That's what the statute says.
Okay, but then I also heard you say, but we got it, how are they not going to accept it if we don't get there soon enough?
What I'm saying is if we don't get there soon enough, there may not be available funds to fund it,
So they wouldn't accept it?
so they wouldn't accept it.
Oh, gotcha, okay, so
So
they could decline it.
other counties could come in, take the money that's
So
available.
you're saying there's a certain amount of money that they're going to give out, but they're telling everybody, you have to do it.
Yeah,
You have to do it, come to the trial, and if you get there soon enough, we'll give you the money. If not, you're still going to do it, but we're not going to do it.
correct.
So it's first come, first served.
Correct. And if it comes back that the Division of Budget says, we'll approve it, but we're only approving 50% of the budget, then you guys have to make a choice. Do you want to do it anyway with 50% of the budget, or do you want to say, no, we're not going to do it on that?
But you said we have to do it.
No. If it's approved by this, by the county, they can approve it subject to the funding. And in fact, the plan itself says that it is subject to reimbursement from the state.
Is that a yearly reimbursement or just the first year?
It doesn't, the statute doesn't say. The statute just says that it will be funded by the state. Yeah.
So it looks like they
And what
won
I'm-
the first year.
Let me explain it a little better on whether or not we have to do it. The county has to
Right.
provide assigned counsel or defense attorneys for all arraignments. That won't change. It's just an issue of where is the county going to do that? Are they going to do it all over the place, or are they going to do it in one place to
And thank you for that clarification. If I can now refer to Chairman of Shared Services, this sounds like it's a bit of a shared service item. Is your committee looking at that at all?
Well, we haven't yet, no.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, we're in the offshoot, haven't you had contact with Washington County and other counties concerning the lowering of the age and so forth? So we are looking at that shared aspect, but I'm not sure that falls with this one.
Okay.
So that's a separate issue, so no, we haven't.
Okay. Thank you, Doug.
The other thing I just wanted to add is I provided everybody with a copy of a statistic that of what my office physically appeared at in 2017 for during the day when it was not during the court's scheduled hours, after hours and weekends. So that's where you get these numbers from, when we were not required to be in that court on those days. So that's it. So if you look at these numbers, it's 810 cases that my office has had to appear at, the DA's office has had to appear at, the Sheriff's State Police in Glens Falls, someone had to appear with those clients to the court. So it's a lot of man-hours that are going into this, and having a centralized piece would probably cut down on those man-hours. And one of the other issues on this is really about justice. It is required to have an attorney for a defendant at arraignment. It is considered a critical stage, and because it's a critical stage, they must have an attorney. So we are trying to comply with the requirements. It's about justice. It's not always about unfunded mandates.
And if I could, I just wanted to make sure that that I haven't misstated anything from the chief's standpoint. Are you satisfied if we get that change from the police department on the hours? Are you generally satisfied?
I mean, as far as our meeting with yourself and the sheriff, I was satisfied with the outcome and the arrangements that we were having.
Yeah, I don't like to speak for somebody.
Oh,
because
that's
I'm never
good.
sure if I'm getting it exactly
Thank you,
right.
Chief. Any other comments you'd like to make on this, or? Oh, okay. Marcy, on your numbers here, after hours and weekends, that's about, what, 390?
Yes, sir.
Out of 810.
Right.
All together. It's those 390 that would be covered by the central arraignment, correct?
But also
and then
during those day arraignments, with all due respect, because the person would be held until the next arraignment morning and evening. So we wouldn't have to run out to all the courts all the time during the day, obviously except for city court, because city court has a judge on at all times. But all the other courts, we would either do them in the morning arraignment or the evening arraignment. The goal is to keep someone held no more than 12 hours. So if they get arrested at noon, instead of my office having to go out at 4 o'clock to arraign them, they would be handled at the evening arraignment.
So you're saying that all 810 could take place here
Pretty
under
much,
Central?
yes.
And your office, DA's office, would not have to go to all other towns in the county?
And Chairman, if I could just give you an example. So,
Yes, please.
within the last couple of months, what happens every single day, I would say, is we get emails. There's an arraignment here now, essentially, and then we start scrambling around. So I can remember in the last couple of months, Marcy and I appearing in Queensbury. Now they got to keep the judge there because the judge is on the bench. And while we were there, cases kept arriving. I think we were there, the two of us were there for a couple of hours, so I had to call the office because, of course, this is all unplanned. And this is true for every single one of these. They're not a planned event, whereas if this were to come to fruition, your PD, your police, your prosecutors, your judges could plan. We know we need a person in this place at this time. We have people running out in courts all over the place, handling things. I mean, I grand jury today. We don't have people always just on command to run to court, so it's been it's a real challenge. We're meeting the challenge the best that we can, but it's really imperfect. I think the concept is that you could take those assets and instead of having them waiting, because sometimes you go to a court and you have to wait for the judge because they're doing something else too. It's not like Judge Hobbs who's on the bench full time. Most of the other positions, I believe all of them are part time. So now they're driving from wherever. It's a waiting game for the police, for everyone, and now they're meeting their client for the first time at arrival for clients, and then having these conversations, which takes time. As far as efficiency goes, right now we're probably the least efficient because of the nature of the way it works. So just commenting on the way it works and use of resources, a lot of resources are running around right now, scrambling. It's kind of a scramble every day to address it.
Okay. And Chief Lyons, this would also free up your police officers as well, make your time more efficient so that you can be doing law enforcement in the city?
Yes, it would, by Sheriff York allowing us to use the locker facility more frequently, opening up the hours and who are allowed to house there, it would absolutely allow us to have more presence.
Great. Sheriff?
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you really think about it, we have a meeting, it's really, for me, it's a no-brainer, because that's what we're mandated to do as the sheriff, mandated to take in prisoners. So what we were doing before were, if they didn't meet the suicide watch, we weren't bringing them in. But sometimes it would only be a matter of 2 or 3 hours, that same person will be back. What that did was that made the police officers, it got them off the road, and they had to administratively find somebody to arraign them for. So for a couple hours, to me, it was foolish. Just bring them in now. If we're doing it already for our officers, we should be doing it for everybody, because we're going to be getting them in a couple hours anyway. So that's what the county is mandated to do from the sheriff's perspective. So for me, it was an easy thing.
Okay, Supervisor Bramer?
Thanks. I'd like to know if we are still having day arraignments in places like Queensbury Town Court.
Oh, yes.
So those 200, though, then...
Those 200 are not on the Monday when Queensbury is in session.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Chairman?
Yes, Supervisor Diamond and Chairman Conover. Go ahead.
Conover, you can have the pleasure first.
Oh, no. Mayor, I wouldn't drink.
Just one question for the judge. I just want to be clear that you mentioned on the record that this centralized arraignment is not a requirement.
The centralized arraignment is not a requirement.
It's not a requirement.
The requirement is providing counsel at
Exactly.
arraignment. You can either do it by setting your attorneys all over the county, or you can do it in one location. That's
And
the choice.
it looks like the state is funding this. We don't know how long they're going to fund it, but apparently they're going to fund it for the first year, and probably review the process after that. And at that point in time, it'd be up to the county. If the state decides not to fund it, the county would then have to be responsible for funding. But I just want to be clear on the record that it's not a requirement. that it's up to the county to make that decision.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And to follow up on that, do all communities need to participate in this? Is this something that the city could opt out of?
Let's say the city opted out, we would have to change the plan some. It would not be as efficient. You would have arraignments happening at the CAP court, the centralized arraignment part, and you would have arraignments occurring at the city court. So if the city didn't want to participate, I could rewrite the plan to make that happen. Don't know if that plan would be approved by the state or not. And it doesn't seem like a very efficient use of anybody's time to do that.
Thank you.
Other
Chairman
comment,
Conover.
please? In regards to the initial conversation we had about this topic about a month ago, the issue that I brought up was the cost associated to the city because they have their own independent leasing agency. And there was additional costs when we initially talked about that. So at that point in time, I encouraged the board to reconvene and discuss that, but we worked that out. But I just want to also mention that those costs, additional costs, because we are independent of the county, with Golden Landing also would have been responsible because they have their own independent leasing agency in regards to that.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, Bolton Landing
But we worked the
hasn't
details out.
been using the lockup facility, but
It's the transportation costs that
Correct.
were associated and the amount of time that an officer would be required to be there for the arraignment that would then take officers off the patrol division because they'd be responsible. Those were the questions we had, but it sounds like the issue has been resolved, so
Yeah.
I don't
Believe it
have
has.
any more issues around that in regards to the separate.
So sounds good.
I'm fine.
Great. Thanks, Supervisor. Supervisor Conover.
Just, I think that, Kevin, we should do an evaluation on the shared services side, because we know what the quantification is there from the state of New York in terms of what costs as part of the plan that they cover in the first year, for example. So maybe we need to do a bit of an evaluation of the plan and what costs should go which way under the plan. For example, we needed new vehicles. If the county needed additional vehicles or a new vehicle, if the city needed a new vehicle, that would have to be part of the plan. And under the shared services plan, there's certain metrics that the state has already told us that they're prepared to pay for. We know that and we don't know. Hope that we would evaluate. One sentence here is, shall I say, overly general. It doesn't really tell me, you know, an awful lot. It says subject to availability of dollars, subject to an evaluation of shared services.
Okay. Thank you. Supervisor Hogan?
I'd just like to ask for some clarification for what this means, the outlying courts that only have 1 day a week.
In terms of when those judges would appear for arraignment?
Right. And
The-
where? And where?
the judges and the outlying courts would participate in the CAP program. They would appear based on a schedule that's prepared by the Magistrates Association, which they're all part of. Some judges would do more weeks than other judges. Queensbury is a very busy court. They'll do more weeks of coverage. The other outlying courts will participate on a pro rata share based on how many arraignments, and we're lucky the Public Defender's Office has some numbers on how many arraignments they do. But they'd be asked to do it on a pro rata share based on their number of arraignments. They may do one week in 18 months for some of them. But there is benefits to the judges who participate in this plan. The judges who participate in the plan are compensated through the state of New York for their time. So there are some judges, with what we found in Washington County, was there were a number of judges who volunteered to do it. They're retired, they would like to do it, so they're volunteering to come down to do it.
Well, they're not volunteering, they're getting paid.
True. True.
That's why they're volunteering.
Yeah, exactly.
Will they be compensated for just the time spent?
Yes.
So...
Only if they do an actual arraignment are they compensated. Right now, they're not compensated when they're on call anyway.
Right, but they're home.
Yeah, they're home.
So for
but when
instance-
they are called to go out to the court, they're still not compensated for that.
Will you be providing some place for them to be in between hours? So
They're in the CAP courtroom that the county has already started to work on. There is a judge's chambers attached to that. There's an office, a bathroom.
That'll be available.
That's available for them. If they wanted to do some work, hang out there.
How are you going to handle the clerk for them?
The judges are used to doing after-hours arraignments without clerks, and we have not put in for a clerk. The higher you make the budget, the more difficult it will become to get passed through the division of New York State Division of Budgets. So if we continually put in additional things, there are right now 4 CAP programs approved and working in the state of New York. None of them have clerk positions. So the judges are trained by OCA on how to work the computer, how to put in the input the orders of protection. The computers and software are supplied by the state. They have an instantaneous scanning and forwarding of the documents directly to the court of original jurisdiction. So that court receives them the moment the arraignment takes place. The original documents are then mailed to the court of original jurisdiction.
So, like, an order of protection can only be modified by the original jurisdiction. How's that going to be handled?
The judge sitting in the court, let's say we have Judge Muller from Queensbury sitting in the court for his week. That judge has a Hague arraignment to do with an order of protection. That judge, Judge Muller, is actually not sitting as Judge Muller, Queensbury Court Judge. He is sitting as Judge Muller, acting Hague Town Court Justice. So his order is inputted.
It can be modified by...
And it can be modified by the Hague judge because it is a Hague order.
Good, thank you for good question.
Okay.
Good clarification. Marcy, do you have anything you'd like to add on this?
No, I'm hoping that we could get a resolution to move this forward. Everyone has worked really hard on it. The sheriff has been unbelievably fantastic in trying to open up his facility for everyone. We've spent a lot of time and effort on this. It's been 2 years in the making over, so it's not a quick thought. We spent a lot of time and effort and everyone's cooperation, and I appreciate it.
Yes. I did ask Mayor Hall to attend today. He was not able to come because wanted to make sure that the city was on board. The mayor asked Chief Lyons to come as well. I'll put it out there to the 3 supervisors from Glens Falls if they'd be comfortable on moving on this consolidated arraignment plan today. I would like to see it come out of committee. I'd like to be able to have Judge Hobbs move it along and get it in the queue for funding and such.
Mr. Chairman, I did speak...
Kramer first, sorry.
Okay.
The hand went up just before yours did, Jack.
Timing is,
It is. Claudia?
The Supervisor Diamond may have more information, but I
Okay.
did communicate with Mayor Hall this morning, and he said that he was all set as long as the chief was okay with the modified agreement, which it sounds like we will be once we get that ironed out.
Okay.
That's my latest
Diamond?
update from the mayor.
My points.
Okay, good.
Mike, yeah.
Supervisor Driscoll?
Mike, yes.
Okay, good. Chief, and I want to thank the chief and sheriff and undersheriff and state police for working out those details, for that cooperation. Thank you. Yes, Supervisor Conover.
I think if you move it out of committee, no, I think it should be on receipt of the resolution from the city council. I think we should
Very good.
respect that.
Yes, let's put that in there. Somebody would like to put this onto the floor? By Supervisor McGowan.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Diamond. And that is contingent upon funding, contingent upon acceptance, what's the wording there, Chairman?
I think all the municipalities have provided resolutions. I think
Okay.
a comparable resolution from the city council affirming what we're about to do.
And then as we move this, does this go on to another committee or to the board of supervisors?
Say, go on to
Go to the board.
full board.
Okay. So this will go to the full board from here for consideration. Okay. Any further discussion? Do we have the language we need? Okay. I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all your work. Probation, Robert. I don't have. There it is. Yes, thank you. Robert? Morning. Good morning. How are you?
Yeah.
I have. Supervisor McGowan, something before we begin?
Yes, I'd just like to put it out on the record that my better half works under Bob Busey over in probation. So, what is your recommendation? Should I step back or just not vote? Or Mary's here. What?
Yeah, abstain.
Abstain.
Okay. I think we have the information. Would you like to begin?
I would. I have two resolution requests this morning, then some information and stuff on raise the age. The first resolution request is to fill a vacant position. One of our probation officers, John Kleins, who's been with the county for 38 years, been with our department for about 12, is finally going to retire. John currently works as a probation officer who's stationed in the Queensbury School District for 3 days a week. AD work as well as numerous pre-sentence investigations. What I would like to do is to fill that position. John will be retiring March 29th.
Is that moved by Supervisor Simpson, seconded by Supervisor Sokol? Is there any discussions on filling this vacancy? Supervisor Sokol.
What we have is we're currently canvassing the list. We've hired in the last 2 years 5 or 6 people from that list simply because of retirement. So we're canvassing the list and we're looking to see if we have a valid list. If we do not have a valid list, there is a probation officer trainee test in June. If we do not have a valid list, Mr. Kleins is offered to work part-time or temporary for a little bit to help fill the void. We will have probably another retirement at the end of June. So again, our department, we've had people who have been there for 30 years plus, and they're retiring. So this is where we're at. I will say the history of civil service list through the years is there's not as many people take that test anymore that they used to across the board. So we will look to frequently give our test every 2 years as opposed to every 4. We've never had an issue with the list expiring. I think you don't want to give a list when you have valid people on the list simply because you don't want to discourage the people that are on there. They haven't been reached and you're ending a list and you're giving it again. But necessity is going to indicate that we're going to need to get the test more frequently. But on the other hand, we're going to have people stop retiring probably.
Right. it's your cycle.
One would never know, but one would indicate, yeah.
Okay, good. Could you just describe what PINs are?
PINs are people in need of support. Currently, the age of PINs is 18. It's incorrigible behavior, truancy in schools, ungovernable behavior in the school district. For parent PINs, kids that don't behave, they don't listen to the parents, they don't obey the rules. That's the simple version. There's a lot of reasons why they don't do that. PINs is something that's been with the state of New York. It's a status offense. PINs offenses do go into family court. And when they go into family court, they do have the option of being placed out of home. That doesn't happen frequently in our county. But the difference between a PINS and a JD is a PINS is a status offender. Juvenile delinquent is an individual currently under the age of 16 who commits a crime.
Thank you for that clarification. This really spreads out your department, doesn't it? Being in charge of PINs.
It's a matter of, it's something we've done throughout the years. I mean, it's part of what we've done for business. In the state of New York, probably half the probation departments are the lead for PINs and the other half of the Department of Social Services. For instance, in Washington County, the Department of Social Services is the lead agency for PINs. Warren County, historically, has been the probation department. I think with Raise the Age, this is another topic. I may have some suggestions about that at a later date, that quite possibly a shift in terms of maybe from our department to the Department of Social Services may be a better fit, because we can talk about maintaining what we have for our staff or our anticipated Raise the Age, as well as potentially options may be better funded through the Department of Social Services. Our reimbursement is a pathetic 8% on the dollar. It's sad. Department of Social Services, preventive workers, that type of stuff, 62% on the dollar. So maybe a better bang for your buck, especially with Raise the Age coming, because that's going to increase our workload. The state indicated that would be 100% reimbursable to the counties. We'll see what that actually means, and we'll see how long that goes. So those are things to think about as we evolve into the course of this year, and I'll throw it out there, but I think it's something worth looking at.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that up to us now. We'll keep us apprised. Any further discussion on the motion that's on the floor? Hearing none, call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None?
Abstain.
Oh, and one abstention. Thank you.
Second resolution request is one of my favorite ones that won't cost us any money to do something. What we're looking to do is to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Leanne Dorm, Victim Service Coordinator with Sexual Assault and Crime Victims Program. What we want to do is something a little bit different. What we try to do in our department is to do things different that we think would be beneficial to our youth. What we like to do is to start a girls' circle group with Leanne, who is trained to do it. It's something that we've been looking to do, and I can't take full credit for this, because this is one of my probation supervisors, Amy Secor, the probation supervisor in the juvenile unit. She came to me with this idea. We looked to see where we could find someone that was trained to actually do this type of program. Through collaborative meetings, we found somebody that could do it. Leanne, she's willing to do it. She's energized to do it. That's a part of what she does out of her program. It's not going to cost us anything. And it's something where we have a group of young women who are PINs and JDs who sometimes with gender issues, we don't give them the best service we could do. This will allow us to have an opportunity to do something that's restorative in nature. It empowers young women, and I think it's a great opportunity to do it in light of the fact that we have somebody who currently is able to do it, and it's not going to cost us a dime. So I'd like to enter a resolution request to do that memorandum of understanding.
Okay, brought to the floor by Supervisor Driscoll, seconded by Supervisor Bramer. Any discussion on these? And the term is open-ended on this.
Yeah, I think what we want to do is to start this in May, and hopefully I think we put an end date that we're going to be back here to, or I'm going to have to do a resolution to continue to, so hopefully it's something that we are able to do, we like it works, and we continue to do it in the future. However, the county attorney's office would like to do that for us.
Does there need to be any end date? We're good? Okay. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And one abstention.
Last item I have for informational and for discussing is on Raise the Age. Just a couple things that are coming up. Raise the Age criminality goes into effect October 1st of 2018 for 16-year-olds going to 17. Next year we will have 17-year-olds going to 18. There's a lot of conversation. We've had different things that we spoke about, and one of the things everybody likes to talk about is not only here but across the state is detention. What are we going to do with these kids when we need to do it? We actually, in December, had the Office of Children and Family Services as well as the State Commission on Corrections look at our old jail because that was thrown out there that maybe that would be a viable alternative. We looked at it. It would be for about $12 million. So that's something that is out there. We had representatives from Washington County came over, and so that's out there. A couple things I think to keep in mind since that has happened is the governor's office did a 30-day amendment, and in the they always do a 30-day amendment. But part of the 30-day amendment that they have is to allow counties and not-for-profits to use the dormitory authority to build and construct detention facilities to raise the age. Previous to that, it was only for the Office of Children and Family Services. So it makes it a little bit easier if you want to do that, but that's out there. We're assuming that will pass in the budget, so that's one of the things that's out there. And I can go through a couple of things quickly and then come back and talk more about that. So that's out there. The second thing is there is a detention summit for secure detention at the Office of Children and Family Services next week, March 28th. I've been invited to attend. I will be happy to go there and listen to see what they have. I think that what we're seeing now that we're getting closer to April, the conversations about raise the age, about detention change every day. And there's a lot of things being that weren't going to happen that maybe are going to happen now. So the conversation's picking up. Things change daily, so it seems. So it's worthwhile to see what type of information we can get, what type of information we can bring back. Finally, once the governor's budget is passed, we assume sometime in April, the state will be sending financial plans to the counties on Raise the Age for county departments that are affected. Basically what they want is the county departments to look at what you think this is going to cost your department, put financial projections in, send it to the state, they'll review it and take a look and see if they think it's reasonable or whatever it will be. But I think initially that's a shot in the dark because we don't know what the players are, we don't know what it's going to look like, we don't know what the judges are going to do. So we're going to all have to take our best case estimates, and I think the state's aware of that. So anyways, that's going to be coming out in April. So we're just seeing the things. Obviously, October will be here sooner than we think, and that's just reality of what we have going on. So those things are going on there. In Warren County, we have 2 family court judges. Paulette Kersko has been named the judge to handle the youth part of Raise the Age. So that finally happened. She's looking to have a meeting, I think next Friday, March 30th, to say, she's the judge and what other information she's gotten from her training sessions and to start the process. So things are going to be picking up with that. So those are some things I have. Any questions on Raise the Age, detention? Anything I can answer for anybody?
Supervisor Diamond?
Chairman, Bob, you had mentioned that there was a cost estimate on refurbishing the old jail at about $12 million. Could I get a copy of that?
They didn't actually give us something in writing. They talked about what they thought what they would have to do. Like you'd have to take all the bars out. I mean, obviously, there's other issues in there. So in essence, the structure's fine, but you'd have to gut it. Then they talked about the dollar.
So they didn't say $12 million.
What they said was
There's no documents.
there's no documents
What
supporting
they're
it.
indicating the cost
Right.
is. Okay.
They indicated construction cost. If we wanted to do a square foot, it cost $700 to do a square foot. I think if you wanted to go down that road, you probably wouldn't want to build anything less than 12 beds, which would be about 12,000 square feet. But if you want to go bigger with more, there's been nothing concrete other than
Okay,
what
I was
they-
just curious because you did mention that, and I was looking to review that report, because I think at some point in time the facilities committee is going to have to undertake the discussion on what we're going to do. And I just wanted to make sure that that was not going to be something that we would consider based on what might cost. Thank you.
Supervisor Bramer.
Thanks. While facilities is thinking about what to do, what are we going to do with the juveniles that Judge Kirschko places in detention?
Well, I think this is what we should do. The estimates for us are 0 to 5 on any given day. There's currently 6 or 7 secure detention facilities in the state of New York. If we started to build something today or in December, obviously we would have it by October. We have alternatives to detention that we will talk to the judge about, such as electronic monitoring, release under supervision. On any given day, we may be able to find a place to put a juvenile in. We'll be in the same boat with about 50 other counties, looking to find places on a given day. There is no good answer from the state. I think what we're seeing is the state starting to maybe recognize that there's going to be potentially issues, and we're hoping that they're going to have some solutions that would allow us at least some temporary place to put individuals. They do have adolescent facilities for sentenced youth already in place. I know that NISAC has been working on that, saying you've implemented a complex piece of legislation, you put a start date that is unreasonable for us to match, and potentially there could be a lot of issues from a small jurisdiction to a large jurisdiction on those days. So the answer would be we'll do our best to educate the judge of what is out there in the current state of secure detention. We will indicate what we have for alternatives, and should you make this choice, we will make our best effort to find something. And if we don't, I think those questions will be asked to the state, what do we do if we do not find, if we can't find something? And we've done our best efforts. We've looked at situations. Nobody's going to have anything built this year or next year probably. So it's going to be an ongoing situation that, at this point, there's a lot of unanswered questions.
Thank you. Sheriff?
Bob and I discussed this, and between probation and the sheriff's office, we would have to transport those individuals. So much like building a jail as you did 12, 15 years ago, it was my recommendation, I think Bob agreed with it, is that until we see how this law goes and how many counties want to get involved in building a facility, I can foresee Washington, Saratoga, maybe even Essex and Warren County maybe building one facility. If the state is going to make us do this, but I say for the first couple of years, we're going to have to be doing a lot of driving. It's going to, you know what I mean? We're going to have to, wherever there's an open facility, and it may be out in Buffalo, we don't know. But I think that's still going to be cheaper at this point in time to drive them out there. It's going to be a lot of work for whoever has to do that, which is you and me. But I think that's probably still cheaper than the $12, $15 million that you got to start. It gives you a couple of years to figure out how it's going and who wants to be involved in it. That would be my suggestion.
Okay, Supervisor Bramer?
Thanks. I'm guessing that it will be places in Buffalo, and what does that do to a child?
Yeah.
The state is recognizing these people as children, and then they're going to yank them 5 hours away from whatever family they might have. I'm not blaming you, I'm just saying it's crazy.
Not well thought out by the state. I think that's an understatement. I think with anything you do a cost analysis. We know what numbers are of individuals that were arrested. We have projections, but you got to remember that things are going to change with this. Law enforcement's going to be arresting kids in a different way, maybe. We have a judge who is a family court judge, not a county judge. What is she going to do? What is that judge going to do? I mean, we don't know. We can't anticipate that. We can just obviously plan and talk. I think that, when I spoke to the sheriff, I think the best way to do it is to look to see what your actual need is and what does it cost to transport, and what's the per diem cost to put a child in. And obviously it gives you time to do that, but we don't have time. There's going to be situations that are going to be difficult that we're going to have to deal with. It's nothing that has been accompanied, it's nothing that the county did, it's just a legislation that's put on all of us. And if you don't have a secure detention facility in your county, you're at a disadvantage. We use Capital District Secure, which is made up of 4 county consortium of Schenectady, Saratoga, Rensselaer, and Albany. Ownership goes back to Albany County next year. So we'll see what Albany County wants to do with that. They're looking to put requests for proposals out to expand Capital District. The footprint of Capital District is not that big. That's over by the Albany County Correctional Facility and by the airport. They don't have that much room over there. What we found out when they came up here, you need certain spaces for recreation and those type of things if you're going to build it. It's my understanding that they're looking to waive a lot of things now. They're waiting for counties to jump on board and say we're going to do this. A lot of counties are saying, even if you go through the dormitory authority, there's money up front that's going to, that's a big cost. And at the end of the day, what will the numbers look like in 5 years if we have some place that we don't put, the kids don't come in, because there's still operational costs to that. And so it's a lot to think about and a lot to do. The best thing we can do is gather information, be a part of the state conversations when they do it. Other counties are interested in a lot of things. I know Washington County was, St. Lawrence County was looking to do something with their old jail. I don't know where they are. There was talk out in Oneida County of doing different things. So, down south in Westchester County, they're looking to expand their expand their juvenile facility too. So, I'd like to ask you if there's anything we can do for advocacy, but Supervisor Loeb has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just clarification on what the problem actually is. Right now, we have a population of youth up to age 15 that's described. This law, we're going to increase that population and change the demographics, but the description and definition is still the same. So it's a matter of volume that we have X number of kids right now, X plus 5.
It's a matter of volume, and it's a matter of putting people in a detention facility at that particular rate. So you can't use the local jail anymore, so we're going to have to access secure detention. Through the years, we've done a lot, working collaboratively with the Department of Social Service not to put people in detention. So we're expanding the pool of people coming in that are going to go to detention, and there's a lack of detention.
So what do we do now? Or are we inadequate at this point, regardless of it being
October? Yeah, our projections for the increase would be, like I said, on any given day, 0 to 5. So maybe it's not a problem, but there's going to be a time when we're realistically going to have to find a place for a child. And we have alternatives, as I said, but that's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge for all of us to find a place if there's none in the state. And I think the questions will be asked, and they've been being asked, what does the county do if you don't have any detention centers? Because the state has indicated that detention is a local responsibility. And the state has kind of distanced themselves that they realize detention.
Bill, just haven't answered the question. Right now, we have up to age 15. Is that because there are no kids?
There's kids throughout the state. Warren County doesn't place a lot. Very few. Due to the nature of the crime and different things other than the places that have programs.
It's going to be a volume issue.
It's going to be a volume issue. Detention is very costly. We recognized that 15 years ago to try not to do those things.
Thank you.
Okay. Good. For the sake of time, I'd like to draw this to a close, but want to thank you very much for updating us on this issue. This is on our plate, and it's going to be a big one, and it's a complex one because it involves a lot of agencies.
Yeah, and I will keep people apprised. It's a situation that we're all involved with across the state.
Thank you. Next up is Office of the Emergency Services. Okay, Amy, please.
So the first item on the agenda is to amend our existing contract that we have with the USGS for the Spoon River gauge. Their headquarters decided for any continuous stage gauges that they needed to instead keeping the information for 120 days. They need to keep that information indefinitely, which is really good for us when we're looking for historical data. We don't have that at this point in time for the schooner.
Okay, motion, bring it to the floor. By Supervisor Hogan, seconded by Supervisor Driscoll. Okay,
I've got a question.
please.
So this is for maintaining that?
Maintaining the data, keeping that
Just the
data.
data.
Correct.
Because there was an issue, I don't know, a year or two ago where they weren't going to fund the gauge any longer?
Correct. And that's why we're funding part of it. So that cost of funding is going up, which is why we want to amend the contract.
So I just want to ask one question, because we had met with these people about doing another gauge up on Scroon Lake, and it was a big number. And is there any alternative? I mean, is this something that we can own equipment and get this? I mean, is it this important to go through the U.S. Geological people? I mean, have we looked at some other alternative? Because it doesn't seem like they really want to be in this business, because it just keeps escalating and they're withdrawing. You know, they offered to fund ours for 1 year. After that, it was, you remember, Craig, wasn't it pretty?
It was on it.
A year?
Yes.
Something like that? So is there an alternative for this that helps us and not?
There might. I'm sure with technology out there today, there are things out there that we could do. Are we going to get the same service? Probably not, and then we're going to be responsible for all the maintenance. At this point in time, the USGS folks, they're responsible for all the maintenance.
Okay.
So I would love to see something at the 418 bridge. I was looking during the whole ice jam situation that we had this winter. I was looking at the Canal Corp. They have videos that you can go in and look at different camera shots. And there's some shots at one of the bridges that I was looking at where you could see the level of the water based on just a good old-fashioned stick in there with some numbers. So there are other things, but it depends on where it's located and if you have Wi-Fi service, if you can get to it. We also were looking at a spot in North Creek. So there is another USGS river gauge in North Creek. It's right next to the bridge there. But down on the Hudson River, a little bit farther, there's a fairly significant bend in the river, and where the bends in the river are usually where you have ice jam issues. The problem is there's no road that's close to it. There's no Wi-Fi up there. There's nothing up there. So when we were trying to brainstorm and come up with really good ideas of how we would get that intel to us and to the National Weather Service so they can give us some hydrology reports and stuff, we didn't come up with any good ideas that were cost effective.
No, I think it's important. I just was questioning, is there an alternative? Because it doesn't seem like it's going to be very costly in the future.
It wouldn't surprise me in 10 or 20 years if they push back and say, nope, we don't want to do anything at all. And at that point in time, actually probably before that point in time, we should be looking into alternative ideas for the Spoon River, possibly for 418 Bridge.
Amy, if you could look into that, see if there are alternatives.
Certainly.
Well, any other discussion on this? Hearing none, called the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. And the next one is the funding part of it, isn't it?
That is correct. So we're looking for an additional $1,000 for the remainder of this year for that contract.
Okay. Supervisor Simpson, Supervisor McGowan on the second. Any discussion? Okay. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. Next.
Resolution number 3 is for a new contract with New York Fire and Signal. This is for the hydrostatic testing of the air cylinders for the scuba team.
Okay. Supervisor Sokol and Supervisor Simpson on the second.
I have a question. How often do we have to have these tested? Every 5 years?
believe so, but don't quote me on it.
It's the same as the Scott cylinder,
It's the
right?
same, correct.
Okay. All right, that's fine.
And funding for that is,
It's in our budget already.
Yeah.
okay. Supervisor McGowan.
Yeah, there's a visual inspection every year on the tank, and it's every 5 years for pressure tests, so basically hydrostatic. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries. Next, number 4.
Resolutions 4 through 6 are all grants, they're federal grants that get passed to the state that we have had the opportunity of getting annually. We know when we get these grants, there's a very, very short turnaround time, and so that we're not struggling with the paperwork and stuff, we usually put these grants in to this committee prior to getting any guidance from them, but we are under the impression from the state that these are all coming as they normally do every year.
Okay.
Can I move 4, 5, and 6?
Yes. 4, 5, and 6, seconded by Supervisor McGowan. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries. Right. Anything else, Amy?
The only other thing we have is a discussion point. Last week, I was invited to go to the Water Quality Symposium out in Syracuse to give a presentation about the collaboration between emergency management offices and soil and water conservation districts. I'm sure a lot of you know that we have a very close relationship in Warren County, and we're encouraging that statewide because there's so many assets that we can provide to each other. And a good thing that came out of this, we were having discussion with one of the other counties, and they have a very robust community rating system, which is something that we've been talking about doing in our county, or at least providing to the towns. It'll help constituents with their flood insurance, the actual dollar amount that they have to pay for the flood insurance. If we get that number, which is 10 if we don't do anything, which is what we're doing right now, it could be lowered to a number like 7, which will, is a percentage, it's based on a percentage, and it'll help them with their flood insurance.
With the rates on their flood insurance or ability to obtain?
No, usually they're required to obtain flood insurance, but the actual rate will go down, how much these people are paying. So that's one of the reasons that we've been talking about doing it, and it's in our hazard mitigation plan. So we're hoping within the next 5 years that we'll be able to move forward, and then it's up to the individual towns, you know, the city and the village, if they want to participate. It does mean a little extra paperwork, but a lot of times stuff that they're already doing, it's just a matter of documenting it correctly for the federal government to say, yeah, we'll give you a lower number.
Well, thanks. Good luck on pulling that together. That will be helpful. I know that in the town of Chester, a lot of folks have flood insurance because there is so much shoreline in there, and that would help the constituents.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you. Next up is Sheriff Department.
Morning.
Good morning, Sean.
We have a pretty short agenda today. Item A is request a resolution to amend the county budget to reflect money from insurance recoveries in the amount of $33,018.86. This is a culmination of, attached the backup to it, several payouts we've had from our insurance carrier.
Okay, moved by Supervisor Garrity, second by Supervisor Sokol. Okay. Any discussion on these? Okay, hearing none. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries.
Item B is request a resolution to amend the county budget for FY 2016 State Law Enforcement Terrorism Prevention Program grant, $20,000. It's just a carryover from fiscal year 17 into 18.
Okay, Supervisor Sokol, Supervisor McGowan, bring it onto the table, onto the floor. And this is just pure accounting to take care of money, moving it from one year.
Correct.
B and C together.
Okay, B and C. Supervisor McGowan, you good on that? You were the second.
I'll second the amended.
Okay, so we'll take B and C together. These are just perfunctory accounting. Called the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries.
Item which is not on the agenda, we were just notified by the Treasurer's Office yesterday that one of our longtime patrol officers is retiring. So it's a notice of intent to fill the position. The officer is Daniel Hill, works out of our Chester station. He's been with us for about 25 years.
So you need to fill that position?
We need to fill that position.
Okay, moved by Supervisor Sokol, seconded by Supervisor McGowan. Okay, motion to fill a position due to resignation.
Retirement.
Retirement, sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries.
The only other thing under topics for discussion, we currently have 2 vacancies for the position of correction officer. One vacancy was due to a promotion to the position of sergeant. The other one was due to a resignation.
And these 2 vacancies for corrections officers, this is a lot better than it was last year.
Much better now that we have a civil service list. They're actively replacing people.
Great, good. Supervisor McGowan?
Oh, no, this is just discussion? Or we're
Yeah.
voting
Yeah,
on it?
no.
Okay.
No, that's just a discussion item, correct? Good. Hearing nothing else, I will make an apology to the Supervisor Simpson because he always comes up following criminal justice and public safety, and we tend to go a little bit over time, so we know that you keep yours on time.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second.
Aye.
Sokol. All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.